Hi, beautiful souls. This is Sadhana. Welcome to my channel. Today, I am going to carry on with my deck collection series. In part one, I shared with you my collage decks. And I wanted to pull out for this video my different fairy decks that represent other worlds, other dimensions, magical creatures, and so forth. And as I was pulling out decks, I really began to feel I wanted to share a few different aspects of these decks. One was just the other worlds and dimensions that are represented. And another was decks that work really well with kids. So whether you're working with younger children, your own children, whether you have teens or tweens that are clients or who are curious in exploring the tarot. And the other aspect, which I'm going to do in a separate video, a third video, is decks that lend themselves to story. And the reason I wanted to, it's hard to explain here. I think decks that tell a story have another layer. Okay, so they have another aspect that if you are working with a client over an extended period of time, it gives you an opportunity to weave that story as metaphor into their own journey. And I think this is a really special feature of certain decks. And so we'll have a look at that as well. So today we'll look at the decks that are here on the table. And I'm going to show you a few of my favorite cards, some of the special features of some of these decks, as well as how and when and with whom I use each of these decks. So let's get started and look at the cards. Alrighty, I have 13 decks open on the table, kind of all sorted and ready to go here. So I'm kind of hoping to weave together a little bit of a story for you. This is Crystal Visions by Jennifer Galasso, and this version here is trimmed. I just left on the titles on the bottom. One of the things I like about Jennifer's deck is the dragons, and you get dragons in more than just a suit of wands. So here you see a dragon in the cups. And I absolutely love this Ace of Wands. If you like crystals, quite a few of these decks we'll look at today also feature crystals. So you have the option, if you are aware of their energy, of bringing that into a reading as well too. So one of the drawbacks, I suppose, from this deck, some people don't, it's a bit like the Liminal Tarot and those decks that feature only young, slim, attractive folks. But if you can overlook that, there is a beautiful energy to a lot of these cards. And for me, the thing about this deck is the dragons. They're just so beautiful. I love the way that they're woven in. They're just, I don't know, so integrated. And I think my second favorite feature of this deck is the lotuses. So you'll see lotuses in many, many of the cards, in the majors as well as the suit, a lot of them in the suit of cups. So yeah, so that's Jennifer Galasso's deck. If you like dragons, you might like this deck as well too. I think Linda Ravenscroft has drawn them really beautifully. Love this strength card. This is the Mystic Fairy Tarot. The guidebook's by Barbara Moore, so it's a really nice Fée deck to have in your collection. As well, you get a story, a developmental, extensive story in the suit of wands of a dragon story, which is really nice. I love this High Priestess card. It looks very shamanic to me. And here's another example of, bringing in crystals and so forth. This deck is the borderless version. I do have the one with the frames on it, and you can look at those side by side in a video. I'll put a card up for you so you can see that. We have lots of different types of fae. You can tell connected to different seasons, as well as water nymphs. This one looks very angelic, almost like does look like an angel. So yeah, and then like she's on the dragonfly there. So you can really see the fae in proportion to the animals that are included in this deck. Most of the fae decks, I find, do a really good job in not overusing elements from the human world. And the only card I don't really like in this deck is the Magician card. He's got a bunch of playing cards. which is, I don't know if I put it near the top, sorry. And I'll try to point that out to you, because I think when we're looking at a deck of liminal spaces and other places, when we have these unusual human elements in a deck, it really can throw a person off. Dragons are definitely a selling point for me, a feature in fairy decks. And when I see really well done dragon cards, I love it. This wolf is... So here we have an unusual proportion, right? Because for the most part, the fairies are in proportion with the animals. And here we have obviously a life-size, human-size fairy in the moon card. And so the deck does jump around in that respect. Oh, here's the magician card. So he has, right? He is playing cards. Here's another deck that does a good job of incorporating dragons. If you like dragons, this is the Manga Tarot by Lo Scarabeo. I've done a video, quite a detailed video on this deck as well too. So I'll get you a link for that. The dragons, when I first used this deck, it didn't occur to me that this wasn't a deck of, I thought it was just kind of a historical Japanese deck, but it's not. It's very much a deck of magical and liminal spaces, and it really brings in the mystery and the history of the warrior element of the Japanese culture. This deck has a season symbol on every single card, so it has its own system in that way, and that you can incorporate the energy of the season into the cards. And of the cards that I'm going to show you here today, there's a few that really bring in the season element. One is the Victorian Fairy Tarot, and one of the Doreen Virtue decks for sure. The Fairy Tarot cards. There's a few in these fairy cards that really use the seasons well. And here we have, so this, reminds me very much of Durga riding the tiger. So we have a real kind of mythological energy, right? And here we have swans and polar bears. It's totally, totally magical. I pulled out some of my favorite cards here. Here is the Empress, which you'll see is number 4. So they've reversed in this deck a lot of the male and female roles. So the Emperor has feminine energy. I just love the shield. Here's the Emperor. Isn't that cool? Yeah, and this is the, I'll just move that over because I know those are higher. This is the Fool card. So it's almost a black and white card. There's a little bit of color, and you can see, and I can just kind of feel and hear these popping up as she walks. So these flowers are in color here. Isn't that a great Fool card? And this card here reminds me a little bit of, I think it might be Anna Kay, one of the Anna Kay cards, but a really clever use of the mirror. One of the other features in this deck is that the aces include all of the seasons. And so they're very complete. And, we talk about aces having the potential of the suit. Well, not only do they have the potential of the suit, but they're extremely balanced as far as that goes energetically. So yeah, so that's the Manga Tarot. Emily Carding in her Tarot of the She also incorporates quite a few dragons. And here we have Dreamer King, Warrior 8. So you're not just getting dragons associated with fire. There's a strong dragon energy in each of the elements. Right? And I'm sure you've seen that in certain oracle decks where you have a water dragon, a fire dragon, an earth dragon, and so forth. I absolutely love this Chariot card with the winged horse. One white wing, one black wing. And then the other thing I want to talk about today is this kind of incorporation of the water nymphs and the mermaids and the she who live in the water. So we have water she, we have also she that are tree she, right? So they are incorporated in. They are the life of the tree. And you'll see that in quite a few fairy decks where you've got the tree, the energy of the tree is the energy of the fairy. There's no separation between that element. I think this one is amazing here. And this one kind of takes on the energy of the Guardian Tarot, which I'll show you in a bit. But see here, this is the Guardian by Beth Salonen. So, is that her name? Beth Salonen. That's just such a great, great Fool card. And so I'll try to point that out in a few different decks, because I think that is a, what's the right word? I think it's a great characteristic of a Fée fairy deck, is to have to acknowledge the life and the energy of the trees. Right, so she does a really, really good job of that. And here's an example of the water she. Then when we look at a deck like Dame Darcy's Mermaid Tarot, because in Dame Darcy's deck, we have, again, lots of, here, let me move this one out of the way. We have lots of mermaids, but we also have a human element. And so it reminds me a little bit of the Little Mermaid story, where we have the conflict between the interaction with the humans and the mermaids. So, or between the sailors and the mermaids. So this is very much a deck of that. It not so much focusing on the life and the environment and the energy of the mermaid world, but that the challenges and the conflicts of what happens when the mermaids and the human world interact. And so here we see in the Ten of Wands, a mermaid carrying these human oars, right? And so carrying the burden really of being perhaps in love with and connected with humans. And then this could be a scene right out of The Little Mermaid. Right, so of all the decks I have here today, this is the one that really kind of walks between two worlds. And I think when you use this deck, that's really a powerful energy to look at, and that is, are these what I want to say, like, what happens when these two worlds collide? Can they meet peacefully? Can they coexist peacefully? Or, you know, is it doomed to a life of aloneness or unhappiness? And so, yeah, so that's really kind of a heavy question for this deck, because I know a lot of people just use this deck because they love the mermaids. But there's something about that when you look at all these fairy fae decks in contrast and combination with each other, it's kind of, I don't know, I think it's just food for thought. So here we have the Six of Wands. And if we're going to go with the RWS, you know, success, happiness, victory kind of keywords. But the mer creature here has the swords. And so what is this a victory over? Is this a victory over the human element? What is this really about? And I think that Dame Darcy has created the potential to bring in this layer as well too. So that's Dame Darcy Mermaid Tarot. I mentioned fairy fae decks that incorporate seasons, and this is one of them. This is Fairy Tarot cards by Virtue and Valentine with illustrations by Howard David Johnson. I did show this deck in my collage video, and if you are looking for a deck that has more extensive keywords on it, I think this is a really nice option as an introduction to the, you know, to the tarot. This is the Three of Cups. It's really lovely. I think this Suit of Summer's done really well in this deck. Here's the Hermit, which is kind of cool. And this deck has a good use of, you know, ages and so forth. So there's little fairy folk, older fairy folk. And for the most part, it's really well done. I think a couple of the collages are a little photorealistic for me, but for the most part, he's done a really good job. And so if you want to bring in seasons, this is an excellent deck for that. The other fairy deck that does well with the seasons is the Victorian fairy. So here you go. Here's the Victorian fairy. And in this deck, this is the only card that has a human on it. So here we have the Fool. This is the French version of the deck. I did a video of this, the French version of the deck compared to the Russian version. And so I'll put a card up in the top for you with that. Because the coloration is slightly different. I believe the Russian deck is a little more saturated. The cards are a slightly different size too. So here we have a human wandering into the fairy world. And this is a really great deck for bringing in the energy of flowers and so forth. And here we have the fairies in proportion to the animals. And for the most part, the fairies are really little in this deck. Love this Five of Summer, so Five of Cups. And again, so if you work with the seasons, if you work kind of with the energy of the elements, this is a really good deck for that as well too. Tremendous amount of diversity in this deck as far as ages go. And so you have the older, more experienced Fae and then the younger ones. And I love the Magician in this card. He looks like a mystical Chinese master. And the English version of the deck, if you can get it these days, is very, very expensive. And so the French version and the Russian version are still available, and you can get the English guidebook through Fool's Dog. And this is one of these decks that just has a very simple ace. And so the pure potential of the season, the pure potential of the energy of the season and the element is represented by a bit of nature. Yeah, so this is the Victorian fairy. It's quite the world card. I kind of get lost in the pictures of this. And I love that her eyes are closed and she's in her magic, and the way she's sitting on the toadstool. And I loved this deck from the moment I saw it. It's just really, so that, yeah, you get the really clear idea of the seasons in this card. Even in the majors, right? So you've got the holly in bloom here. So that's the Victorian fairy. That's the French version. So I was talking about Fée decks that really kind of cross dimensions. And in the Tarot of the Hidden Realm, so this is artwork by Julia Jeffrey, guidebooks by Barbara Moore. We have, again, Fée, water Fée. We have Fée that are on the land with legs. We have some Fée in the air as well, too. Here in this deck as well, too, we have just an animal for the aces. So the pure potential of the suit represented by the energy of the animal. And this deck, if you haven't seen it, most people have, it's very close up. So it takes a little while to kind of work with the faces and read the energy of the deck. There's lots going on in the backgrounds. Sometimes it's trimmed off, but it's a very, very special deck. Here, I pulled some of my favorite cards here. The pages, the young children in this deck are just amazing. And this Knight of Wands, the dance, the connection with the bird, perhaps the phoenix in the background, it's just so extremely powerful. And I love the way that he's holding the egg here. We really see the celebration and the beauty of the life of the Fae. And this Five of Wands is done really, really well. You know, you can see the inclusion, the exclusion of the children as they play in the trees. And then we see the beauty and the pure potential in the acorn held in the hands of this child. And here's another one with a beautiful young fairy. And the devil card is just so great in this deck. If you have a hard time with the devil, even just getting this app, the Fool's Dog app, and then having a look and reading the description for the devil card. If you don't have any decks where the devil card kind of takes on that energy of natural passion and the healthiness of natural passion, and that the beauty in all of that, I really recommend getting some more kind of Celtic kind of decks where you have this kind of energy as opposed to the, you know, the Christian devil energy. Here is the Wheel of Fortune. It's called the Fairy Fortune. And we do have a few animals in this deck that are with the Fée as well too. So there's the wolf. So you would, in this deck, assume that the Fée are life size, you know, and I mentioned that in the previous deck. So sometimes the Fée are little and sometimes they are human size. And I'll just leave you with that one for this deck. I absolutely love that King of Pentacles. Just the connection between the grandpa and the grandchild. It's really, really beautiful. This is an out-of-print deck. This is the Hezicos by Mary Griffin. I would really encourage you, if you like this deck, just to keep an eye on the trade pages, because this deck, while a lot of people do have it, does not resonate with everyone for various reasons, which I will mention. But it's a really... so Mary based this on a world that she imagined existed just outside her door, in her garden. And she called this world the world of Hezicos. And this is truly a deck of, you know what this reminds me of? Did you ever read, it's a Canadian book. It's by Pierre Burton, and it's about children who go into a world underneath their playhouse. And for the life of me, I can't remember what the book is called. It's just the most magical world. And they go down underneath their playhouse into this other world. And that's what Hezicos reminds me of. It's just really this completely other kind of magical place. And you do get more, so you have these more gnomey creatures as well as these more human. So like the High Priestess, all of the court cards. Here's an example of a court card. And in this deck as well too, you have, you know, water element fairies. And here's a dragon. And I love this one. It reminds me kind of Jack and the Beanstalk. It's pretty cool. And then here on the Hanged Man, you have one of the, I suppose, one of the people, one of the beings that appears on the court cards. And I think this Ten of Swords is done really well too. Just the way she chose to lie the gnome-like creature over the mushrooms. Here's the Ace of Wands, Seven of Swords. And look at the color. That's another kind of special feature about this deck, is the brilliant color. This is the Crystal Unicorn Tarot by Pamela Chen, illustrated by Lisa Higuchi. So now it's time to kind of blur your vision, blur your focus, and instead of seeing humans on the RWS deck in the world of RWS, we have unicorns. This deck is pastel, kind of very soft colors, very simple to read if you do read RWS. If you like to bring in the element of the crystals, there are crystals on most of these cards. And you'll also see crystals sometimes on the unicorns themselves or on their cutie marks. So on their back hind quarter, there's a crystal. And so that can also be brought into the deck. But for the most part, it's a straight up RWS clone, except with these cute little unicorns. I briefly showed you this card earlier. This is the Guardian Tarot by Beth Salonen. And through the energy of the trees and the earth, Beth portrays the teachings and the magic and the mystery of each of the cards. On the Mystic Fairy Tarot, I was talking about the magician and how the magician has playing cards, and I didn't really like that. This is another odd one for me. So here the magician has the Ouija board, and here's a pendulum hanging on the left shoulder or hanging off the tree. Yeah, so let me know what you think about that when you get a fairy deck or a deck of other kind of worlds and dimensions, but it brings in human elements. I know a lot of animal decks do that as well too. This is a very powerful Knight of Wands. It almost looks, it's definitely magical. It feels almost like a clown. And it's kind of cool how the roots of that tree, the roots of the moonlit tree are coming down into the forehead of that tree. And here's another one. So here we have a violin. Love this one. So the King of Swords. That pure kind of communication and understandness. You also get the coolness here, right, of the Suit of Swords through the blue and the lunar energy. But we have the lunar energy with the swords, right, not with the cups. So this is a really, really deep deck. It takes a little bit of time to work with this deck. And I'm going to mention the violins because I am going to show you Shadowscapes in a bit. And she does put feminine figures and feminine energy on a lot of the trees. And here you see we've got, you know, the bare bones, right? The bare ribs here. And that might call to you, that might speak to you. So she's really incorporated a lot of different subtle changes to the trees here. So we have a very feminine looking body in the Ace of Swords. And these dark wings. And the lunar energy. And so if you read the lunar energy as cups, this deck will take a little bit of time because the lunar energy is very strong, I think, throughout the whole deck. Here we have the Five of Wands. And so there's not a lot of fire going on here. This may be a sun, but to me, a lot of her suns look like moons. And this deck I will include in a couple of other videos in my collection as well too, because I think there's a lot of potential in this deck for many, many things. But I wanted to include it here because it definitely is of another world. This is the Stolen Child Tarot by Monica Knighton. It's based on Yeats's poem, The Stolen Child. And this is a truly magical deck. Set in a liminal space, a liminal fairy space. And here we see a lot of different plant and animal life. Lots of different fae in different seasons with different animals. Chariot card is just so charming. I don't know if you can see the snail down here. So we have the snail and the turtle. And in some of the cards, it's not clear whether we're looking at a child in the fairy world or we're looking at a fairy. And so here we have Fae on the land is Fae in the water, which we do in a lot of these different decks. And the Queen of Oak with the honeybees and the acorns and the lunar energy behind. It's a really magical deck. Really beautiful. Here's an example here, right? So we have perhaps the child underneath the frog. And we have polar bears and butterflies and bison. This is absolutely gorgeous. It's a little bit of a dark card. It's hard to see if you don't have it in your hand. But just the way, the gentleness and the size of the bison compared to the child, it's really, truly something. Yeah, so this is The Stolen Child by Monica Knighton. And there's a song as well, too. I didn't realize when I kind of was Googling the poem and reading the poem, there's a song that was done. It's really been a powerful work that's affected a lot of people. So even if you're not interested in the deck, I would encourage you in your study of Fae and Fairy to go and to read the poem. The last deck that I'm going to talk about today is the Shadowscapes Tarot, and this is the Czech version. The cards are slightly larger. I think this deck really has it all. So we have lots of cards where we are in water, where we're underwater. There are magical beings. There's turtles and fish. And the way that Stephanie Pui-Mun Law has drawn these beings is just so enchanting and so powerful. And every single card has so many, many layers. If you have not purchased the art book that covers the majors, I strongly encourage you to have a look at that book. It's another way to kind of delve into her artwork. And so from the sea, we move to the land. Sorry, we're going to go back to the sea again. There's a lot of foxes in the suit of wands, and this ties in really, really nicely with the Kitsune Oracle, if you have that one. Just that magical element of the foxes. And the thing I like about that is I never really felt that foxes were tricky or sly or, evil creatures. And when I had an opportunity to read the guidebook for the Kitsune Oracle, I do have a video on that. I can give you a card for that as well too. It just really gave me this whole new dimension and perspective on the foxes. And here's another beautiful card, right? So we have the Phoenix. And you get a lot of kind of like stained glass windows and different perspectives. You get these Celtic knots, and this one is just absolutely stunning. This is the Nine of Pentacles. And don't you just feel through the use of color and just the way everything is swirling together? I just feel the energy, and the use of the piano incorporated with the tree doesn't feel awkward to me at all. Here's the Empress. She's just one of the most beautiful integrated Empress cards I've ever seen. And this Eight of Pentacles is, I really like decks that include spider cards, but this one is really takes the cake. And the magical beings that are included in this deck are described and named in the guidebook. You may not have heard all of the creatures' names before. Absolutely stunning lover's card. This is another favorite card. And I know this same kind of energy has been portrayed in other decks before, but I just love the integration. So here we have a tree, right? Anthropomorphized, and then the world on her back. And look at the beautiful kind of magical world on her back. There have been tarot tags or questions asked before. If there was a tarot deck that you could live in or be in, what would it be? And I think for me, it's definitely Shadowscapes Tarot. By no means is it an easy world to be in, but it is fully integrated and full of beauty. And here's an example of two cards where we have, again, the energy of the magical beings and the trees being, completely integrated as one. Here's the Hierophant card, which is really powerful. And we have iguanas or some kind of lizard type creatures on the Ace of Pentacles. Sorry, I haven't given you the names of many of these cards. The Six of Wands is really mesmerizing, and I have contemplated this card many, many times. So there's 5 ravens sitting on top of 5 of the 6 swords, and then this gorgeous creature is flying off on the white bird into the moon or the sun. And oh, it's just so beautiful. I find when I work with this deck with myself, it is as equally disturbing as it is peaceful and comforting. And I showed you the 10 of Wands already, right? The one with the world on her back. And here's the page, which evokes so much passion and connection. This deck just gets me so excited. I feel so passionate about this deck. There is the High Priestess. I'm going to leave you with that for today. And I'm going to reorganize these cards because a couple of them I will be including in the video about which decks I think work really well with kids. And then I'm going to bring out a whole bunch more. Some of these will remain on the table, and then I'm going to talk about story in tarot and how to weave in story as medicine when you're working with clients or working with yourself through some kind of muddier, longer, deeper type issues. So thank you very much for watching today. Let me know if you have any questions, and I look forward to chatting with you below. Stay well, my friends. Namaste.